Hi, I'm Ben Ferguson, and welcome to your AMAC Weekly News. First up, the cancel culture has overtaken our country. We are seeing the rebranding of centuries-old companies, historical statues being removed and desecrated, and now even the Son of God, Jesus, is being canceled if he is not approved by those who say they're going to cancel everything. So what does this actually mean for our country? More on this in just a moment. Up next, if you haven't learned by now, it's important that you know you can only be around other people without a mask or social distancing if you are protesting or rioting for a liberal cause. Now, if you're attending a Trump rally, you are threatening American lives. More on how the liberals are trying to shut down our economy and Trump rallies in just a second. And finally, AMAC Action President Bob Carlstrom is here to update AMAC members on the latest fight from AMAC to protect and defend America's history. Quick reminder, if you haven't shared this video with your family and friends, make sure you do it right now. Your AMAC Weekly News starts right now. Liberals have stepped up their movements on the cancel culture in America. It's not just about canceling law enforcement anymore either. Take a look at this. We are seeing statues commemorating American history being torn down, removed, and vandalized almost daily as liberals attempt to erase our history as a nation. No, not every portion of our history is free of regret, but we cannot change the past. Instead, we should be learning from it. We keep these statues really as a reminder of our history, the good and the bad. Every nation in the world has history they are not proud of. The point is, no nation should erase the past. Why, you may ask? Well, you can only learn from the past if you remember what actually happened. But now this is not even about erasing the past. It's about taking away anything that the extreme left does not believe in. Perfect example is this. A new demand from Black Lives Matter leader and activist Shaun King. His demand is to tear down all images depicting Jesus, the Son of God, as a white European because they are a form of, quote, white supremacy. That's right. Any and all statues, paintings, or any other form of artwork that shows Jesus as light-skinned should be destroyed because they have been declared by a far-left individual as white supremacy. This hit the news following a tweet Monday sent out by King that reads, "Yes, I think the statues of the white European they claim is Jesus should also come down. They are a form of white supremacy, always have been. In the Bible, when the family of Jesus wanted to hide and blend in, guess where they went? Egypt, not Denmark. Tear them down." Sadly, he didn't stop there at completely misrepresenting the Bible. He continued in his thread by tweeting this: "Yes, all murals and stained glass windows of white Jesus and his European mother, Mother Mary, and their white friends should also come down. They are a gross form of white supremacy, created as tools of oppression, racist propaganda, and they should all come down." Reactions on social media have been mixed. Now, some agree with King's position, while others have pointed out that cultures other than white Europeans have depicted Jesus in ways that resemble the local community. Ethiopia, for instance, has depicted Jesus as a black man for more than 1,500 years. Likewise, images of Jesus appearing Asian can be found throughout the Far East. Now, what is even more shocking is elected officials defending the lawlessness of tearing down American history. Perfect example is Governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. He actually defended tearing down statues, calling it, quote, a healthy expression of anger. Watch this from an interview aired on NBC.
Yeah, I don't even know what the president's guidance is, Savannah, frankly. Cities are making decisions. The Teddy Roosevelt statue, I think it was less about Teddy Roosevelt, but the other parts of that statue. And look, people are making a statement about equality, about community, to be against racism, against slavery. I think those are good statements. And it depends, can you overdo it? Of course you can. But in New York, I don't think we've overdone it. And I think it's a healthy expression of people saying, let's get some priorities here and let's remember the sin and mistake that this nation made, and let's not celebrate it.
Now, President Donald Trump has tried to put a stop to this insanity with an announcement that he will issue an executive order to protect the monuments. He's also called in the National Guard to protect the monuments in Washington, D.C. Now, Trey Gowdy said that the executive order is unnecessary, not because the actions are wrong, but instead because there are already laws on the books about this. I want you to hear what he had to say on Fox News.
Well, I mean, I have a couple of different thoughts. I mean, I'm not huge on monuments. I mean, I don't know where to draw the line. I mean, if you're only going to have monuments to perfect people, then I thought, well, we're just going to have monuments to Jesus and my wife. And then I wake up this morning and I understand that there's some people who want to take down monuments and statues of Jesus. So if you don't want a monument, then go through the process of having it taken down. But to deface public property is a crime. And if you want to do, your options are go through the process of taking the monument down legally, or if you want to do it unlawfully, at least accept the consequences of your criminal act. And it is a crime to deface and tear down public property.
Do you think the president needs to do this executive order for the law to have teeth?
No, ma'am. I mean, I looked at the statute. And not surprisingly, it's already against the law. I mean, you can't go to a public park and set it on fire. You can't tear down a public monument. You can't deface. You can't go to the Lincoln Memorial and spray paint it. Those are already crimes. So I don't think the executive order was necessary. It's already a law on the books. Not surprising, I hope, to anyone that you can't destroy and deface property that does not belong to you.
It's sad that we live in a day and age where you have to now double up on the laws that we already have on the books to protect these statues. Yes, in this country, we have history that we have fixed, the wrongs that were happening. But the reality is what you now have is many on the left are trying to remove everything that they don't like. Thank goodness we have a president that is now trying to defend our laws and protect and reinforce these laws. And we here at AMAC are working to ensure that these laws will be passed and that our history will be protected. So if you've been watching the mainstream media, you probably now know that coronavirus is only spread at conservative-led events like a Donald Trump for President rally. However, if you protest and riot for Black Lives Matter or Antifa, then apparently you're in the clear. Just look at this bias in the media from Newsweek. Now, these two headlines you're looking at are literally 1 hour apart. Now, my question to Newsweek is, how can you run this headline within hours of a Trump rally and you literally can't get COVID tests that fast for the people that are there or the results? Yet you blame Donald Trump for a spread of COVID that would be impossible for his rally to be responsible for. Well, forget all that for a second. This is how liberals are portraying what is taking place in our country. I have right here a video of an MSNBC reporter interviewing two Trump voters and specifically asking why they aren't wearing masks. Watch how this reporter responds when they turn the questions right back on them.
Do you mind if I ask you guys, why not wear a mask?
It's not about the mask. It's about the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy that it is okay for tens of thousands of people to go and riot, to go and protest, but you cannot have a group of 1,000 or I don't know how many people are here. But this is not okay.
Are you concerned about your guys' own health? And that
I am not.
Why don't you cover the protesters and ask why they aren't wearing a mask?
Yeah.
Why didn't you do that?
The protesters at those events are wearing masks. I'm asking
What's
you
that?
guys. I'm asking you guys.
I'm asking you a question. Why don't you
I'm
ask?
asking you.
I'm asking you a question.
You could ask a great number of folks why they're
I'm
not wearing
asking you a
masks.
question. Why aren't they wearing a mask? And why isn't the liberal news media focusing on them not wearing a mask?
Could I ask you, sir, why not you yourself?
I'm asking you a question. You didn't answer my question. Answer my question first.
Now, to be clear, this is exactly how the liberal mainstream media works. They attack conservative voters that are supporting the president while they look the other way at all the other protests happening all over the country with people night after night, week after week, not wearing a mask and not social distancing. Let me give you a perfect example of this hypocrisy. There is a Black Lives Matter elected official from my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. She sits on the county commission. Her name is Tammy Sawyer, and she's doing her best now to shut down the government because of a, quote, recent spike in COVID-19 cases that has nothing to do, she claims, with all the protests and all the riots that have been happening in Memphis. She, however, is trying to shut down the government, which will hurt the economy. And you got to start asking the question now, is this really about public health, or is this about actually having a bad economy on purpose so that the chances of Joe Biden winning get a lot better? Just this week, she tweeted out this from @CNN this morning: surge in coronavirus not attached to protests, but to the numbers of cities that reopen too soon. Trust me, I do my homework, y'all. So let me get this straight. Your word is supposed to convince me that we need to destroy our economy by further shutting everything back down. Even more than that, this elected official is just one of many hypocrites that you see on the left. Let me give you an example. She literally has been cheered on and supported a mask resolution that requires the use of facial coverings as things open and begin to reopen. However, this same elected official is on social media at Black Lives Matter protests without a facial covering and without social distancing for more than 2 weeks. My question is, when does the hypocrisy actually end? Liberals know that the economy is key to Trump's reelection because he created one of the best economies this country has ever seen. Now, while former Vice President Joe Biden hides in his bunker or his basement, the president is out doing his job for the American people. If you really want a reminder of just how consistent the left and the media's messaging has been on COVID-19, just take a look at this montage comparing how they viewed conservative voices during the pandemic versus how they viewed liberal voices. Take a look.
And a far more serious scene. Watch these images. Really just an ugly, dangerous scene at the state capitol in Michigan.
As we look at this extreme group of people,
those pictures and those clashes really show the chaos.
And you're out there with guns?
I don't want to call them rallies. They're not protests.
These quote-unquote protests, I don't even think that that's the right word, because protests are supposed to be peaceful.
I'm not embarrassed to say that I was afraid.
It's not clear what they're demanding to infect other people, demanding to make other people sick.
It's dangerous, and these people can take this home with them and hurt their families and all the rest.
I'd like to ask them if they're willing to sign away their right to treatment if and when they get infected.
Who the hell do you think you are? I don't understand what is wrong with people. Stay at home.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
That ain't a riot, what we're seeing right now in Minneapolis.
Any reasonable person would say we shouldn't be destroying other people's property, but these are not reasonable times.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
The beautiful thing is we're seeing citizens who are caring and concerned. They're hitting the streets.
Heartwarming to see so many people turn out peacefully.
You know, Brooke, I think this is a march, really.
But as they're coming off, it's peaceful. They're saying peaceful protest.
Across the country, it's bringing people together, community with unity.
People are risking COVID to explain to this country that we're fed up.
Now, it's very clear. The media is deciding whose voices are heard in this country, whose voices should be considered to be appropriate or accurate, and whose voices should be silenced or shut down. Now, AMAC is here to make sure that we stand up for the strong men and women in this country and what this country was founded on, but also that our voices are actually being heard. So this week, it has been a very interesting week when it comes to what is happening around the country. And many of these activist groups are trying to get rid of American history and anything that basically is a statue. Even one leader of Black Lives Matter is now advocating for getting rid of all the pictures, murals, stained glass windows of Jesus Christ. Also, the wise men and Mother Mary. Joining me now to talk about the history that's just being deleted, is Bob Carlstrom. He's the president of AMAC Action. Bob, I appreciate you coming on today. Even this early this week, you had the mayor and the governor of New York come out basically defending the ripping down of statues. De Blasio said it was a a understanding point with these protesters, that it's a way to get out their anger by ripping down some of these statues. We've seen Grant and others rip down in front of the Natural Museum of History. They're taking down anything that is a statue. They don't even know what it is. I mean, we've in San Francisco have had people that were former slave statues that have been ripped down because it's a statue and it must mean that America's evil. I can't believe, A, they're allowing this to happen, and B, this is really trying to completely take away from history. Yes, history can be good and bad. They're just trying to completely get rid of everything that makes America America.
You're absolutely right, Ben. You know, it is our history, you know, and it should not be forgotten, and it should not be revised by the leftists. You know, we understand, we've learned a lot. Our country has a history of good and bad, and so does every other country. But we have a strong history of righting wrongs. And we learn from our mistakes, and we have. Indeed, the civil rights movement and enforcement and laws have been very successful. And this country is committed, really, to their enforcement and addressing bigotry, which is of great concern to the people that seem to be demonstrating.
You know, every country in the world has history. Every country in the world has things that they're not proud of. The question is, how do you correct that course when people come around the idea that it's wrong? And if you look at America, we have a great history of correcting the wrongs and things that we have done in this country that we clearly now believe are totally incorrect. Much of that includes issues with racism. Yet what you're now seeing is these activists who are saying anything that made America America, we're going to get rid of it. That includes Lincoln, that includes Washington, that includes Jefferson, that includes the Founding Fathers. And as one of the leaders in Black Lives Matter put it, we're also going to get rid of the religious symbol, which is Jesus. And he, as he put it, European Jesus, which is a white Jesus. You should take it down forever, tear it down, because he says it is a symbol of white supremacy around the world.
Well, that's a lot of baloney, you know, on their part. A white Jesus, you know, reflects the culture of the time when it was first developed. There are many black Jesus around. There are some Asian Jesuses around. That's just utter nonsense, and it really ought not to be tolerated. You know, we shouldn't have the tail wagging the dog on questions like this, but we should respect and understand the differences and the perspectives throughout history in terms of what Jesus looked like. I think also it's pretty unconscionable by the mayor and governor of New York, you know, to take the view that they're taking. You know, violence, rioting, pulling down, destruction of property is fundamentally wrong, and particularly also the destruction of government property and the destruction of places of worship is totally wrong and should not be tolerated. You know, essentially, the prolonged protests and the anger, you know, essentially sabotages their initial objectives of those that are peace-loving, except for those who want anarchy. You know, and history is full of anarchistic behavior, which is ultimately self-destructive.
You look at one thing that the president talked about. He said, look, we got to change the laws. So if you go after, whether it's St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York with graffiti or tearing down George Washington and putting a flag over his face and setting it on fire, which we've seen, ripping down the statue or trying to, the one right in front of the White House, that there are going to be real consequences for those actions. And the point the president's making is, and I think to many of these weak local leaders is, you don't get to just decide that you're going to tear something down on a random Tuesday, and because of a conversation that's happening, it doesn't allow you to break the law. And the president's just trying to say, we're going to have law and order. You want to vote to take them down. City councils want to do that. That's one thing. But we're not going to allow anarchy and people to decide on Tuesday or Wednesday they're offended by something, and then therefore they can literally destroy the history which is in this country and statues. And I think that's a smart move by the president.
Yeah, I do too. I think the president is right on. I think Ronald Reagan would fully agree with President Trump on this.
You know, one of the things that I've really noticed from this is I think what we are is we have a generation now that is being raised in this country. And Black Lives Matter and many of these leftist groups and Joe Biden's campaign are clearly now campaigning off of, you should be embarrassed of America. You should be embarrassed of this, the greatest nation in the world. And we want to rebuild this nation as something completely different and unrecognizable to what the history of this country actually is. And there's a lot of young people now that are buying into this, that yes, it is that you should be shameful, not prideful in the United States of America.
That's really outrageous on their part. We should be proud of American exceptionalism. Ronald Reagan did a great deal to restore a sense of pride in country. My oldest children grew up during Ronald Reagan's tenure and became absolutely enthused and embraced what he spoke in terms of the greatness of our country, which has continued to evolve and to develop. But in its origins, its focus was on freedom, independence, accountability, and liberty. And those that take the position that we're not exceptional, are ignoring history, the history of the world. We are the world's leader, and the world typically looks to us to provide leadership and direction as to where they should go.
Bob, I really appreciate your time, President of AMAC Action. Thanks for all that you guys are doing and fighting on these issues to protect the history of this country, good and bad. If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it, and it's sad to see that this is happening right now. We're going to continue to fight and remind people that America truly is the greatest nation in the world. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Once again, a big thank you to Bob from AMAC Action for joining us on the program. AMAC Action does so much work for our members, and that's also the reason why I say to you, if you haven't joined AMAC or renewed your membership, make sure you do it now. We've got a very tough election coming up, and we need all of you to be counted as we fight and protect and defend this country, its history, and our president. I'm Ben Ferguson. I'll see you back here next week for our next episode.